Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Patrician with the Business of Data, and I'm here today with Hamid Omid and Kim Basson, who have organized this event for everyone today. So regardless of where you are, welcome to our second Business of Data meetup for 2021, virtually, of course. And today we've got a great speaker on board that we'll get to in a few minutes. Her name is Taylor Brownlow, and we'll do a quick intro in a bit. But first, we just wanted to run through some administrative items here and let you know about some of the other stuff we have coming up. So once again, I'm Tom Patrician. We've got Hamid Omid and Kim Basson on board as well, who will be jumping in and out of the session today with Taylor. Hamid, anything to add?
No, glad to have you all. We are all excited to organize these meetups every month. Sometimes actually we do it bi-weekly. As of now, we are all about data science subjects and how you could use data science, machine learning, data in general for putting your business in a position that is better than before and compete more successfully with your competition. We are going to have Lloyd, but at the end of this month on February 24th. He's a great speaker. They just raised $23 million. He's going to tell us about how they use data science in order to validate some of their features and products and how they use that to come up with their market fit.
Excellent, thanks. And we're working on, just to give you a heads up, we're working on a couple of other sessions for March, one with the data scientist from Shopify, so that should be interesting. And then another with the head of data science from from Spotify, who's based in New York right now, a former Vancouverite, but now living in New York. So hoping to get her on board for the month of March. But today's session is on using notebooks to improve data collaboration by Taylor Brownlow. I discovered Taylor and Count back probably in March, just as the pandemic was kind of hitting. And one of the reasons that I kind of took to it was I'm a bit of a hack when it comes to SQL. So from a analysis standpoint, I know enough of the basics to do some basic analysis. Within my business at Rubberdesk, we've got a BigQuery database set up, and I'm able to go in and analyze that. But then I have my limitations. And one of the reasons, one of the things that kind of jumped out for me with Count specifically was the fact that there was a drag and drop interface, and I could build my SQL query through that drag and drop ability, which I kind of love, and it allowed me to go a lot deeper with the data than I could on my own without asking for some help. So as more of a business analyst as opposed to a data analyst, it really made my life a lot easier to get deeper into the data without having to get all technical. And as Taylor will probably share with you today, it does a lot more than that. It really does allow you to collaborate with a wider team, just as a Jupyter Notebook would. I don't use that functionality within my business at Rubberdesk, but still it's one that we will use as our team grows. And it'll be a nice addition to allowing us to do more collaboration in that field as our business grows. But so without further ado, I want to bring on Taylor Brownlow from Count.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Taylor, sorry, go ahead. Hamid, you had something to say?
Oh, he's on mute.
No, it's okay.
No, I didn't want to add anything. I just wanted to give Taylor the opportunity to share their slides.
Yes.
Cool.
So Taylor, you mentioned you were employee number 5 at Count, and it's still a small business, largely due to the fact that you've been able to run a pretty lean business through the pandemic, which is always, a great sign for any business. But obviously, I've seen a lot of growth in the platform. When I jumped on, it was probably, I don't know, early kind of beta.
Yeah.
You had just come out of beta, and the growth of the platform itself has grown quite exponentially. Every time I kind of go back in now, I'm not a daily user by any means, but more like bi-weekly. When I do go in, I'm noticing new additions and functionality into the platform itself. So just want to ask you a few questions around Count and the platform itself. So what was the initial spark for the founders to kind of create the platform? What was the impetus to really put this out into the marketplace?
Yeah, great question. So our two founders have a background in consulting and a bit of kind of finance consulting as well. And so they had lots of experience of being the person who was always asked for the data, which I think probably a lot of us in this session have experience with as well. And it was frustrating for a number of reasons for them, but they just saw people really wanted to get their hands on data to make a decision. And much like what you're talking about, Tom, there's so many barriers to that, right? One of which is you have to be technically proficient to be able to write in SQL. The schemas are often really, really complex. And there are just all these different ways that it was really difficult for people to get their hands on data and start using it to make decisions. And so they just thought there's got to be a better way to do that. And that was really the impetus for the whole thing, and kind of stumbled upon notebooks maybe a year into the journey and saw the potential of how you could take something, a technology that already kind of exists in a notebook and just make a few tweaks and make it really ideal for business intelligence, which hadn't really been done before.
Yeah. Excellent. And with the development of the platform itself, have you seen that it's diverged a little bit from the original concept and goals that the business had set?
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. So the company was founded back in 2016, so we've been around for a while. There are quite a few changes. The main one I think I've noticed is at first we made lots of attempts to make it very, very user friendly. So we started down almost an NLP path where anyone could come and kind of type a query and that would be converted, or type a sentence and that would be converted to a query. But we saw that was overly simplified for a lot of people, and the technical people still wanted to get their hands in and work on it. So we had to kind of make a tough decision to say, okay, we might sacrifice a bit of the ease of use for some people, but we're going to come in and bring it together so that still analysts can use it. It's the same platform, the analysts and business users can use it. And that was the challenge that we set upon. So we kind of had to come into the middle a bit in those two extremes.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, I'll let you take over and share your screen.
Cool. You guys all see that?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, basically what I'm going to kind of talk about, like I mentioned briefly, how we came across this idea of notebooks and how notebooks in particular can really change the way that data is done in any organization, whether that's the Count notebook or there's many other options like Tom mentioned, Jupyter. It's really how we can leverage this existing technology to change the way that we use data in our teams. And I'll talk a little bit about my experiences personally on some of the problems that I saw not using notebooks and the changes I've seen when you can put in notebooks. Okay, cool. A little bit about myself. So I'm head of data at Count. I have a background in industrial engineering and moved over to London. So if it's dark in here, that's why. A few years ago to do my master's. And before that, I worked in data for roughly 5 years at Intel and Expedia before that. Okay, so my experience with dashboards. So when I first started at Intel, we had just gotten Tableau. And so it was the very big thing, very exciting thing. And I was part of the data analytics team at the time. And so we were really pushing Tableau for everything. And so one of the big things that happened very quickly was there were dashboards everywhere. So every request that came to our team got a dashboard. So whether that was a one-off bit of analysis that one engineer wanted to do, or whether that was a report that the VP wanted to see every day, it got a dashboard. And it very quickly got out of hand. And basically, it became the only way that people in the company could interact with data. So there was no other data portals for them to use. Everything was being funneled through these dashboards, and that's not really what they're for. So the end result is basically there are too many dashboards to keep track of. Someone might look at the dashboard that I sent them for a day and then it would just be lost into the ether. Secondly, so we got the few dashboards that people could keep track of that were bookmarked, so some of the key ones. People just wanted more and more filters. They wanted more and more pages because they had all these different questions that they wanted to ask of the data. And you just can't answer those questions in a flat dashboard, right? You can change filters or you can ask for new graphs, but that's really the only way you can interrogate and ask new questions. So we were constantly adding pages and pages of different analysis to these dashboards. At one point, there was a 64-page dashboard, which was insane. We all took a good hard look at ourselves at that moment in time. And they just became, frankly, unusable. So any benefits that you got from a dashboard being really visually appealing are gone once you add more than 10 filters to it. It just becomes really a nightmare to use. And the third really key thing is because no one could really see where the data was coming from, they couldn't pull it themselves, they couldn't match it, they couldn't validate it. People slowly started to mistrust them. So they would see a number and it didn't exactly match the number that they saw in the portal that they were using. And so they slowly just started ignoring them because they couldn't really fully trust the decisions that they were trying to make using this data. So this was bad for a number of reasons. One, because like I said, people were not using these dashboards or data in general to drive decisions. But two, it caused a real cultural problem. So there became a shift kind of between the different groups, and it stopped being, okay, let's go talk to the data team so that we can use some data to make a better analysis. And it quickly became, I'm not gonna go ask them, I'm just gonna find a way to do it myself and I'll figure it out, which is not a great place. So ultimately, why did this happen? As you can probably already see, there were many reasons why it happened. But in particular, if we look at dashboards, like I said, they can be really visually appealing. I think we all can, it's a great creative challenge to build a really nice looking dashboard. It can be fun. It's really great at giving you numbers quickly. So in a manufacturing setting in particular, it's really great for you to quickly see what tools are down, that kind of stuff. Let me make a split-second decision. But at the same time, for making larger scale decisions, there's just not enough there. So you have no context for any of the numbers on the page. You don't know where the queries came from, where the numbers came from behind the screen. Like I said, you can really only change filters. You can't ask it deeper questions. And it's not good for collaboration, both in terms of between analysts. So if I want to work with someone else on a dashboard, that's pretty tricky. But also between me and the customer that I'm working with. Everything has to be kind of published and done that way. There's not a lot of commenting or things like that are available. So let's take a look at how notebooks might address this. So we see notebooks now in a number of different places. Obviously, the most common would be through kind of productivity tools like Notion. If you guys know Notion, that's a great one. And obviously more on the data science side. So there's Jupyter, Tom mentioned Google Colab and Hex, which is pretty cool if you haven't used that. And what do they offer? So obviously one of the first thing that comes to mind with a notebook is it's full of context. It's basically a Word document. You can add whatever you want in there. When you're doing kind of data and coding, also all your work is in there too. So any query that you write, any piece of code that you write, everything is in the notebook. So if you're trying to collaborate with someone else or to at least have someone else know what you did, it's just right there in the document. You can't really hide it. And that makes it really good for sharing as well for that same reason. The cons is it does take longer to read. Like people like looking at dashboards because they can just look at the screen and there's numbers there and it's, not scrolling down a page. Also for things like Jupyter, it's very language specific. So if I write a Jupyter notebook in Python and I want to share it with a coworker who doesn't know Python, it's not particularly useful at that point. So at Count, what we wanted to do was to bring the benefits of a notebook into BI. So there's a few changes we needed to make to the existing notebook just to get it over the last bit so it became usable for BI. So a few things we wanted to do. We needed it to still be powerful enough to do all the type of complex analysis and high quality visuals that people are used to seeing in dashboards. and in current existing notebooks. But we needed to make sure that those pieces of analysis were surrounded by the right context. So an analyst, instead of just presenting a number, can present the number and explain everything that the person needs to know about it. What are the assumptions that were made? What has been filtered out of this query that they need to know about before they make a decision? And secondly, if the end user of this then wants to take it and do a bit of add-on analysis, like Tom said, ask further questions of the data, they should be able to do that in the same notebook as well. So we needed to make it work for not just analysts who already knew SQL and who knew how to code, but how do we also make it friendly to people who don't know how to code, but they still want to be able to ask their own questions. So I'll quickly give a quick example. Let me see if you guys can see that. Cool. So this is our notebook. I'm going to go through roughly how it works. I'm going to use some example Google Analytics data, but basically at any point, if you guys want to ask questions and stuff, or maybe I should pause here for questions more generally. Is that a good point? Yeah.
Can I quickly make a reference? Is this similar to if we have Confluence and if we have wikis in Confluence? Is this just similar to embedding Tableau views or Google Analytics views into a Confluence page, and then it's basically a word page where you can give context X, Y, Z, but this is contained in its own portal, i.e. count.co.
I would say that's a part of it for sure. Yeah. Confluence, you can do like data wikis in Count, much like you would in Confluence, and being able to link them to certain views does help contextualize a lot of that stuff. I would say the one thing that's different is then if you're not a data user, someone writing the code, do you have a way to query the data yourself other than the way, writing SQL, something like that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Any other questions? No, cool. All right. So yeah, this is a blank Count notebook. Basically, you can type anywhere you want, like you would in a regular document. You can add cells. So cells can either be SQL like this, or they can be drag and drop, like Tom was mentioning. So for drag and drop, you can just drag in the columns that you want here. In this case, yeah, I've got these 4 tables. They all connect to one another. And so I've specified how they do that. So if I wanted to join this table to this table, for example, they will automatically join. And then this is a pretty big table. And then it will show you the SQL that's generated. So I've specified how these tables should join, and so I've done it automatically. But let's say in this case, I might want to look at the number of visitors our website has had by day. So we can pull in date, count visitors, and also pull in revenue. Sorry, the Zoom thing is kind of in the way of my buttons. And from here, we can quickly get a visual. You can edit this visual however you want. So in this case, if you wanted to put them on the same axis and maybe change the color of one of these. So we can also add filters to this. This is pretty noisy. So we can just say last month of data. So this is kind of, again, we can see the SQL that's been generated here automatically for us. So this is how Tom was mentioning that you can build queries without having to write any code. And one of the other nice things about this is you can also, any of these cells that we've just built, so just built cell A here, is now a new table for me to reference. So if I wanted to turn this into like a 7-day moving average, I can start my query like this, and then I can just edit it to add a window function. I'll do one for revenue as well. And now again, we can visualize this if we want to. So we can maybe make this. And then, yeah, well, I'll just give this a title. So call it. So yeah, now this is a really basic notebook. Someone can come in here and know if there's much more data in these other regions. I guess there's not. Come in, pick the region, and it updates. And as there's one other thing that would probably help with this, if we want to give this a title. You can also link any of the text to any of the values that you have in your table. So that way, any text that I have will update when the data refreshes. So if I want this title to update with the region that we've selected, I can do that here. And now when we look at it, it will say North America's daily visitors. And again, this will update when I pick a different one. So anyway, this is a very quick example of how you can build something very interactive, lots of context. I haven't added much in this case, but you can see how you can start to add, this can be, you can do lots of data transformation, for example, so you can link to kind of a data transformation notebook that you've built so that people can see exactly how the data came to be before it got on this page. And then whenever I share this with anyone on the team, if they just want to interact with it, get some answers and move on, they can do that quickly. But if they want to start diving into it themselves, they can go ahead and fork this and start their own analysis on top of the work that I've already started, basically. So that's it. There's a quick demo.
Taylor, one of the things I've always liked about Count is that if you find that there's an issue with the data and you don't have the time to go back to the source to clean it up, very easy to kind of filter that out, building off of one cell and then working off of it to dive further into your analysis.
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of the things here, kind of in this first cell. We just pulled the last 30 days. But yeah, it is really nice to just start with the first, whatever the first cell is here. You can kind of bring in the base table, set your filters. You want to filter out null values, whatever it is. Browser is not empty, for example. And then, yeah, this next cell is going to reference cell D. Yeah.
That was my first exposure to Count, and it's quite impressive, in fact. As someone who works with data quite often, that would be quite beneficial to me.
It's good to hear. Nice.
Yeah.
And as far as data sources go, Taylor, any limitations to the type of data you can bring in?
Yes, right now we're just looking at SQL databases. So as of today, we have BigQuery and Postgres connections. Hope we're expanding that really quickly to Snowflake and MySQL. But for now, it's just limited to SQL databases.
And do you have any restriction on how big of data you could work with here, or it's quite open?
No, and it's actually really quick. So this data, I don't think, let's see how big this is. It's actually not that big. 1.7 megs was that file there. But we've got some kind of GitHub data in here that's in the like 11 gigs, and it works really quickly. Especially if you're running BigQuery in the background like these are, then it's very fast. Yeah.
So it actually connects with your BigQuery or Redshift or anything you want, I guess.
Yeah, so it runs on your database. So it's just running the queries there. Yeah. Yeah, so we don't store any of the data or anything like that.
Got
You showed a quick join earlier, or the ability to be able to build your chart off a join. How easy is that to set up within the platform?
Yeah, so I can show you how I did that. So in the data section here, so this is your workspace. Obviously, you've got lots of projects and things. There's a schema option here. So if you're used to schema.json files, this is how you do it currently. Pretty soon, this will all be a visual interface. You could just drag and drop them. But basically, for each table, you define the primary keys and the foreign keys. So in this case, views connects to clients on client ID, for example. So that's here. And yeah, pretty soon as well for your Postgres in particular, we'll import your schema for you automatically, so you won't have to specify this at all. Yeah.
Excellent. Any questions from the audience?
And maybe from my side, how much of options do you have for visualizations here?
Yeah, good question. So if we look at this, we've basically modeled it off of Tableau. So almost anything you can do in Tableau, you can do in here. There's a few limitations, but so first you have this idea of subplots, which was what we saw earlier, where you had kind of two different sets of axes here. So if we look at like the date on X, average on Y, and then put something else down here. So you can move that down here. You can change the plot type, so lined bar, all that kind of stuff. Customize the colors here. You can change the size of your dots. You can also like add things to these axes. So this, if whatever you can think of. There's dual axes as well, so you can see there's like Y1 and Y2. So that's how earlier I had like a bar on one axis, or two lines that were on separate axes. There's this concept of grouping, which there's a much better example. I'll show you in a second. So this is kind of our visualization best of. So you can do stuff like this with subplots. So this is a scatter matrix here. You have things like diverging bar charts. This again is different subplots that you can do. Jitter plots, which are quite nice.
Pretty.
Yeah, almost anything you can think of. Yeah.
One big issue I have with Notebook versus say Spider is that if it's high dimensional, it's a big headache to actually take a look at the whole data and play with it. Do you guys have something to go around it here?
Yeah, that's a good point. So any of these outputs, so if you view them as a table instead, you can expand them and get a full page view here. And all of these things are interactable, so you can see your whole data set here. You can also, in the notebook, if you want to change the display, you can do that. Like you can customize any of the size of the outputs to help do what you're doing. Yeah.
Nice. That makes me very happy. That's one of the only reasons that I stick with Spider, say, than compared to Jupyter Notebook.
Yeah. I know, is you have to hit like dot head and dot tail and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if it's a high dimensional data set, then good luck with that, because you want to take snapshot of different columns, and it's not really that easy.
Yeah.
Notebook.
Yeah, we used to have it where you could customize exactly the number of rows you got back, but we've just recently changed it so you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Lovely.
Taylor, are there any plans to be able to allow someone to take a chart, spit out some HTML and throw that in, or JSON and throw that into a web page in the future?
We've talked about embedding. Yeah. Right now, what you can do, the workaround is you can share this whole notebook, and basically I can share this with you guys here in the chat. And then anyone can see it and interact with it if it's turned on to public sharing. Yeah, embedding is coming soon though. You might want to embed just a chart in particular. Yeah.
Very cool. I know I'll use that for sure.
Yeah, we've had quite a few people saying they use Notion a lot and they want to be able to just embed some of these charts, but then have them be able to click through to them and kind of see the whole background of where they came from. So I think that'd be a really powerful feature when it's in, for sure.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Anyone who has questions, they can post their questions in the chat room as well. We can ask it on your behalf if you don't want to ask it yourself.
Or just put up your hand and you can jump in and ask it. I think that's perfectly fine if you want to do that. But yeah, either post it or just put up your hand that you want to jump in and ask Taylor yourself.
Hi.
Okay.
Well, cool.
We talked about
Go ahead.
looking at a larger data set. And you mentioned that you had the Netflix data set available.
I do, yeah. I can walk through that. I did quite this is my personal Netflix data. So it's very revealing.
We won't hold any of it against you, Taylor, promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, any recommendation for a Netflix show?
Well, as you'll quickly see, I watch an inordinate amount of Friends, so I could do that. So
You're not alone. So is my 14-year-old daughter. So she's just
we would get along great. That sounds good. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to look at was well, I guess I'll start at the beginning. So the Netflix data itself is kind of not ideal. So anyone can go in and request this from Netflix and you get like a whole zip file full of your own data. So I really recommend it if you're curious how much you watch. So the main kind of challenge here was taking this title field. So everything's in this title field. So it's a real pain to try to extract, if I just want the name of the show, it's a bit of a pain. So I used a combination of some array functions and string functions to basically go in and work out, I want to split by semicolon, or colon, sorry. But it doesn't work for some things, right? Like Star Wars or this Tiger King. It doesn't work because there's too many sections, right? The title and the subtitle are together. So what I did is I split and then I looked for the part of the title that had season. So I said, okay, look for anything with season in it. So you see, identify the season elements. And then said anything before the season is going to be the title, and anything after the season is going to be the episode. So I won't go into the code gets really messy, but anyway, you can do some really complex stuff in here. And so you end up with, and it has to clean up duration. So you end up with something like this, where you can see you have the title, the season, or if it's a limited series, the episode. And then I've been watching in different countries, so I get the country. And I've also given it a type. I just did kind of a basic data exploration here. So this is when you learn a lot about me. So you can see here, you can also get how long you watched it, which is quite cool. So this is the number of seconds I watched it. I didn't like you, apparently. And yeah, so if we look at like over time, the bars are showing the percentage of different types of things that I watch on Netflix. So not surprisingly, it's mainly shows. And then this is just a time series of how much I watch. So it actually went down. So which is good to know. I found other hobbies last year.
You would have thought it would go up.
Yeah, I think I moved into this flat and my flatmate has Netflix on the TV. So that's why none of it is being logged onto my account. So it's false positive there. Yeah, you can see Friends here. So you can also add things like GIFs just to make notebooks kind of more lighthearted, things like that. This is my top 10 shows over time. So like how they spiked up around apparently January 2018 was a big Friends time in my life. And then, yeah, I looked specifically at binging. So I looked at like, if I'd watched an entire season of something in less than a week, then I looked at that here. So I have done that. I think we all have, right? But that is something that has actually gone up in 2020 versus other things. So that could be Netflix algorithm working. They're suggesting kind of you watch whole seasons of things in a row. Let's see. And then I can also see like what time of day I was watching and things like that. So it would be like right now, basically, for me.
Well, it is, early evening in London, so I can understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then the last thing I did was just built an interactive report to see, like, compare how my viewing habits of certain shows are different to other shows. So this is looking at, just Friends over times versus other TV shows. And again, looking at when I watch Friends, which season I watch more than others, and which episode I've watched the most, that kind of stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you got the data, you requested it from Netflix. What did you throw it into BigQuery and then pull it into to Count? Or is it just
they just gave a CSV, so I just uploaded a CSV to
Okay.
BigQuery and then connected it to our instance there. Yeah.
Excellent. What a fun
Yeah, I
way
should
to
just
explore your habits.
oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I just posted a Medium article about it today, so I can share that with you guys after
Excellent.
that. Goes through the cleaning process in more depth than anyone wants to listen to me talk about right now. So yeah.
I know what I'll be doing this weekend.
Some fun with BigQuery arrays. It's a good time.
Well, I'll have to copy you though. I don't have the background to go as deep as you have and create those queries from scratch. So I'll be looking to borrow some of yours.
Copy paste. It's all good. Yeah.
That's really as I said, I've been using it for almost a year, and there's some functionality there that I haven't seen. So goes to show you how much effort and development has gone into the product over the last kind of 10 months. So very impressive.
Thanks. Yeah, and more to come. Yeah, we're not done.
Excellent. Now, at the end of the day, Taylor, a tool is just a tool. It can't save you from creating a data nightmare within your organization. You mentioned during the early part of the presentation that trust was pretty critical. So how does Count help maintain that one true version of the truth? Because ultimately, if you've got a whole bunch of dashboards or notebooks out there showing very similar data and the output is different, you lose that trust from your team. And they're going to start looking at it. They're going to go elsewhere for their data. So how does Count kind of come into play there to make sure that you're looking at the right version of the truth?
That's a great question. I think there's a few parts to that. First thing, you're right. It is a tool and it's up to people to use it in the best way possible. So you could build a notebook that is the same as a dashboard where it just has a bunch of graphs down the page and you've not added any context to it, and you're going to run into really similar problems. The notebook in and of itself isn't going to solve that for you, but it does offer a lot of things to change that. So I think the primary thing that we've noticed in talking to a lot of our clients is the fact that everyone's on the same platform means that that wall that was existing between the two teams has broken down. So now, yes, I might share a notebook with you and you might not really know where I've gotten the numbers, but there's no secrecy behind another platform or like a query that's on my desktop. You can fork it and you can see exactly what it is, and then we can have a conversation about it, and then we can say, okay, you're right, I shouldn't have filtered out those general ledger codes. I should have kept them in, and you can talk about it. And so at least there's a place to have a common understanding, whereas I think in other tools that becomes quite difficult. The second thing is there's some pretty standard ways, I think, to make those connections. So someone mentioned Confluence earlier. So Confluence is all about is trying to build kind of a common language and understanding of the data itself. And I think that's something Count can be really good at too, in terms of creating these data wikis like we're talking about, documenting like this, this is how I transform our data from our our database to this clean data that you guys are using to build your queries off of. And it's serving the similar purpose, right? Let me explain my work to you. Let me explain how it happens. So yeah, I think it's, yeah, a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of using the tools that are available to you in the best way possible, but yeah.
And outside of ensuring that you're looking at, that the team is looking at the right data, your experience at Intel and Expedia, especially, Tableau was kind of early days of Tableau really kind of starting off, and people realizing that they could do more with data than just have to, leave it to one individual and then wait for days to get an answer back. What other ways have you found that businesses can use to improve data collaboration outside of the platform itself, but just to share data more freely? What other ways have you seen organizations, whether within the organizations you work for or your clients today, use to improve data sharing across the organization?
Yeah, there's a really big passion point of mine, actually. So one of the things that I love to tell people to do is to do data sessions with different teams. So some people don't like to do them for a number of reasons, but one thing I did at Intel and Expedia actually was whatever teams I was really working with closely, whether it's the engineering team or something, I would have basically monthly meetings with them. And we would go over the reports that they were looking at regularly from us and make sure that they really, one, understood what we were presenting, but just as importantly, we as a data team understood what questions that they needed to get from that on a daily basis. And we could make sure that the data that we were preparing for them was actually accurately answering those questions. And just having, it's a really simple thing, putting a standing meeting on the calendar, but having that place where that you can come in and these two sides basically are coming into the same room to say, okay, let's make sure the questions that you're answering are being answered, and let me explain to you how they're being answered in the best way possible. So that's one I'm really passionate about, and I would love to see more teams doing that kind of thing, but it doesn't seem to be done very often. Trying to think of some other good ones to do. I think internally also, I've noticed in certainly the data teams I've worked on, the collaboration between analysts doesn't always work very well. Often we're kind of assigned like a group. So, if you're the data person for this team, then any kind of common understanding or learnings between analysts can get lost so easily. So I think something similar where you, again, try to find a way to either physically be in a room or to set aside a time that says, okay, let's talk about, we're going to switch teams maybe this time. Like I'm going to build the report for the sales team and you're going to build the report for the HR team. And we're going to see what we learn from each other and that kind of stuff. So I think setting aside the time is the first easiest thing that you can do if you want that collaboration to happen more freely, is just to designate the time to make sure you do it right.
That's an excellent one. I've seen organizations where they put individuals within groups, departments, and then I've also seen one large data team that, in the end becomes the gatekeepers, which you don't want, right? So I would really like that idea of actually having the data analysts work across different departments and sharing that way. That's going to help grow their expertise and be able to ask the right type of questions the next time they're tasked with a particular data issue. So that's very cool. Now, we're getting close to kind of time here, so I just want to be conscious of that. But you mentioned earlier that you had a new Medium article that you just released today. So if you can just drop that into the chat, that would be wonderful. And how do people get to TriCount? What can they do to give it a spin?
Sure. So you have a few options. The easiest way is just to email me. I can drop my email in the chat, and then also maybe Tom can send a message with the information afterwards. We are in beta right now, so we have a waiting list, but anyone from this event, if you just let me know like in an email, then I'll give you access right away. And it is free for you to get going. We have free 2 weeks to play with it. And yeah, that's really the best way to do it.
Great. We actually have one other question with specific to Count itself. In your past experience, actually it may not be, but in your past experiences, if you have version controlled your queries, then how? In GBQ, you can save your queries in the UI, but can't send them to GitHub.
This is a great question. I've talked to a lot of different organizations in the past year about how they do this, because in organizations I've been in, it's never been done well. It's usually, yeah, some people who are more tech savvy will use GitHub for their own stuff, but there's never been an organized effort to do that. Yeah, I think when I've used Google BigQuery for this kind of stuff, I will use their saved queries and scheduled queries if it's a SQL query. I also use their cloud functions, if you've used their cloud functions at all. So I do all of our internal and data transformation and pulling and stuff like that using Google Cloud Functions. And so I can basically, I have big Python snippets of code that get run on a daily basis to do some of like the more hardcore data scraping and stuff that we're doing. So if you've got Python scripts that you want to just deploy, that's a good place.
I have one. I've got one final pressing question for you. What are you watching tonight on Netflix?
Oh, geez, I've not thought about that. I just finished Lupin. Yeah, no, Friends. I just finished Lupin, which was really good. I recommend that. So I don't know, I'm looking for something new, maybe new binge session. Let's see what my flatmate's watching.
I'm watching Cobra Kai right now with my family, but
I've heard good things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite well done. But that's another story. So Taylor, I want to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and more specifically Count and how the platform really helps with data collaboration today. So thank you so much for doing so, and I look forward to the growth of the platform and knowing that I need to get back in there and start learning about some of the new functionality that you guys have built into it. So I want to thank you again for sharing your time and joining us at the business of data meetups.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I wish next time maybe I'd love to go to Vancouver for the next one.
Well, please let us know if you do stop by. We'll definitely show you around when that time comes, and we're allowed to travel freely. But
yeah,
would love to have you visit here in Vancouver. So by all means, let us know. But in the meantime, thank you once again, and give my best to the team, Ollie and the rest. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what's to come with Count moving forward. And Hamid, you want to wrap things up for us, mate?
Yes, thanks so much, Taylor, for the great presentation. I learned a lot. I'm looking forward to actually give your platform a try. It solves some of my problems, definitely. And next, we're gonna have Lloyd, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session. He's gonna tell us about how they use data such that they can know what markets they want to go for, what products they should make. So we would love to have you all on 24th of February joining us listening to Lloyd.